In my past life, I was murdered in the ocean waves. This time, I purposefully stayed silent for several months and returned smoothly, ready to catch them off guard. My mother stood with her big pregnant belly, while my ex-husband stared at me in horror. "You, how are you back?" I smiled and answered, "Of course I came to see my mom and my new stepdad." You. Chapter 1. After fixing my phone, I logged into WeChat for the first time in months. The latest message came from my husband. "David, everyone, you're invited to my and Amanda's wedding tomorrow." Below, everyone was. "Congratulations. Congratulations." I joined the crowd and replied, "Congratulations. Congratulations." The group chat exploded instantly. How could I miss such a grand event? My mother remarried and her new husband was my husband. Such good news should definitely include me. Right, I slowly shut off my phone. Some things are more fun when discussed in person. The next day after, they had convinced themselves that my message was just a prank, thinking someone must have stolen my phone and sent that message. Everyone finally breathed a sigh of relief. Being considerate for once, I put on a mask, changed into a formal dress, and walked into the hotel. "Hey, did you hear about that dead person's phone sending a message in the group chat yesterday?" I know it's bad luck. Even in death, they still want to cause trouble. The one speaking was my aunt. She had shamelessly begged me to help get her son into my company, acting sweet in front of me, but cursing me behind my back. It's so creepy. You know, they say if someone dies with resentment, their spirit won't rest. I added to the conversation on purpose. My aunt frowned and glared at me. She must have done a lot of bad things. Got what was coming to her, obviously. Just then, my mother walked over arm in arm with David and playfully hooked their pinky fingers together, looking like a couple in love. "Look at how perfect they are together." My uncle downed a glass of white wine, beaming. "My sister is so much better looking than her dead daughter ever was. David, you're one lucky guy." My mother blushed and hid her face in David's chest. If it wasn't for Emma getting in the way, Amanda and I would have been together ages ago. But karma came for her. David knew how to put on a show. He cursed me while tenderly stroking my mother's hair. David is indeed lucky. They say a woman 3 years older is a treasure. He'll be swimming in treasure by now. I clapped my hands in congratulations. My uncle shot me a suspicious look, then slammed his glass down on the table. "Who are you? How do you even know how to speak properly? Such disrespect. Whose family are you from? Call your mother over to apologize to my sister." I smiled sweetly, walked over to my mother, and linked my arm through hers, just as she had done with my husband at first. She was confused, smiling slightly, but the moment our eyes met, she froze in place, her whole body trembling uncontrollably. I leaned in and whispered in her ear, "Mom, I'm back." Everyone was waiting for me to take off my mask. This wedding's main focus was no longer going to be the bride and groom standing next to me. The moment they saw my face, everyone recoiled in shock, some even collapsing into their chairs, legs trembling uncontrollably as they cried out, "Ghost, it's a ghost. Auntie, uncle, it's been a long time. Seems like you've been doing quite well lately." Huh. Those who had been bold enough to insult me moments ago couldn't even meet my gaze now. They hung their heads, shrinking back like guilty children eager to escape. No need to rush off just yet. It's such a joyous occasion today. How could I not say a few words? I grinned cheerfully. Chapter 2. I cleared my throat and walked up to the stage, asking the host for the microphone testing. "Testing, can everyone hear me? Welcome everyone to my mother Amanda's and my husband David's wedding. I'm sorry to say that the union of these two lovebirds is bound to face some challenges, considering the obstacle. You know, me didn't quite die, but don't worry. A pile of dung paired with smelly feet. Truly a match made in heaven." An older relative, who had just gotten a good look at my face and finally recognized me, fainted on the spot, thinking I had risen from the dead. My uncle rushed to help, seizing the moment to put on a performance. He pointed at me and started scolding me. "Look at what you've done since you got here. You're a curse." What have I done? I'm just attending my mother and my husband's wedding on the anniversary of my death. You're brave enough to hold it today, but afraid you're acting guilty. My sister gave birth to such a heartless daughter. No empathy at all, only thinking of herself. It's such a pity for the people around her. David, playing the role of the good guy, tried to get me off the stage. His face was full of feigned helplessness, acting as though he were the biggest victim here. "Everyone, don't be too hard on Emma. She's been gone for so long. She doesn't know the whole story. It's understandable that she's upset. We should be more forgiving. Also, that's the angle. Trying to paint me as mentally unstable. Huh. They said the marriage was to dispel bad luck. That ever since I died. The company's performance had been in decline. Marrying my mother was to keep the family together. How noble and selfless of them. You have no idea how much your mother and David sacrificed for you. You died and left everything in a mess for them to clean up. And now, you have the nerve to come back and criticize them. Exactly. Emma, you should be down on your knees thanking them. A group of relatives egged each other on, their faces twisted with excitement. I still remembered that shortly after my death, while my body was yet to be recovered, they couldn't wait to convince my mother to use my old clothes for my burial. And my mother, she said no, that she had to wait for me to return, crying her eyes out every day. But the next moment, she had already ordered the coffin and gravestone. Emma, it's my fault I couldn't find you. I've always believed you were still alive, she said, looking at me with pitiful eyes. If someone else had said this, I might have believed them. My mother never liked me from the moment I was born. She thought I had stolen my father's love from her, and even tried to drown me when I was a child. After my father died in an accident, she blamed me for it, thinking that if it weren't for me, he wouldn't have had to work so hard to support the family. She even once put tax in my food because my father died in a construction accident. But she'd tell everyone how much she loved me and praised me in front of others. Since they're talking about forgiveness, I guess I won't hold back anymore. I had no idea you all cared so much about me. Now that I'm back, of course, I must sincerely thank each of you. My gaze swept over each guest. See, if she had said that earlier, we could have avoided all this. Always had that ill-fated look, and never did anything right. It's not too late for her to beg us to stay. The crowd whispered among themselves. Uncle, Aunt. I called them out one by one. Those whose names I called straightened up with pride. Their chests puffed out. The earlier they were called, the more smug they looked, as if their standing, in my eyes, was higher than the rest. I couldn't possibly disappoint their expectations. You and your children have all been fired by me. Chapter 3. The room erupted in chaos. My aunt's arrogant demeanor instantly vanished. She hunched over, her face creased with a forced smile, holding a glass of wine as she approached me. Oh, Emma, there's no need to say such harsh words. We're all family. How could we let a little disagreement tear us apart? Your aunt took care of you when you were little. Don't you remember? Oh, I remember very well. I remember crying to go home, and my brother slapped me. Then you locked me in the storage room and wouldn't let me out until I admitted I was wrong. When I was a child, my mother thought I had stolen my father's love from her, so she would abandon me in remote places, leaving me to fend for myself. But each time, I always found my way back home. After several attempts, she realized she couldn't get rid of me and sent me to the countryside instead. Then, why don't we let my brother organize the storage room? Make sure the door is locked, and he can only come out once all the documents from over the years have been sorted. You. My aunt's face turned beet red with anger. Emma, don't go too far. David slammed his hand on the table and started shouting. What do you think you are now? This company stopped belonging to you the day you died. What right do you have to act so high and mighty here? So, finally showing his true colors. Shameless, isn't he? Even when stealing someone else's inheritance, he can make it sound so righteous. In my previous life, I hadn't expected to die so suddenly. I didn't have time to sign some of the property documents, which gave this pack of weasels an opportunity to take advantage. Are you sure about that? Why don't you make a call and see for yourself? Let's see if the company listens to me, or to a miserable stray dog like you. With a smirk, he made the call. The phone rang for only 2 seconds, but before he could say a single word, the call was abruptly cut off. He stood there, dumbfounded, like a helpless, overgrown baby, looking at my mother for answers. Unfortunately for him, my mother, whose head was filled with jealousy, understood nothing. All she could do was mutter, "Impossible. Your uncle should have taken care of it already." My mother grabbed her brother's sleeve, urging him to say something. But alas, my uncle, gripping his phone tightly, trembled. As soon as our eyes met, he quickly shook off my mother's hand. "Don't bother calling him. He's just as helpless as you. Now, you already got the call earlier, didn't you, uncle?" I tapped my phone screen, showing the document about his demotion. At that moment, my mother suddenly clasped her mouth and crouched down, a thick liquid spewing from her mouth. Amanda, are you okay? Seeing this, David rushed over with concern, gently patting her back. Oh, I watched the scene in front of me with interest. My mother was pregnant. Things were getting more and more intriguing. I threw a divorce agreement at David. He wouldn't get a single cent of my assets. Emma, you cold-blooded woman. It would have been better for everyone if you had just died. Why did you have to survive? Why did I survive? To take revenge on this group of murderers. Of course, everyone hoped for my death. Yet everyone tried to please me. How ironic, isn't it? Chapter 4. In my first month back at the company, I fired all those relatives who had been doing nothing but freeloading. The company's performance immediately returned to its former glory, better than ever. In fact, my ex-husband and mother's wedding had turned into a complete farce. The company's employees had already looked down on him for his lack of ability and pompous attitude, and now he was reduced to doing menial tasks around the office, his face full of shame. My secretary asked me why I didn't just fire him. I simply smiled and said nothing. It was as if my mother was trying to make up for all the years because she had wronged me. She followed me around every day, bringing me fruit, pouring me hot water, and even the employees commented, "Auntie is working so hard." But only I knew the truth. It was all an act. She knew I was allergic to mangoes. Yet, the fruit plate she handed me was full of mango chunks. Her belly was becoming more noticeable by the day. Given her age, being pregnant was clearly taking a toll on her. Even though she had done many hurtful things, I still felt some sense of mother-daughter affection. Let me pay for the best hospital. You should have the child terminated. You're too old, and the risk is too high. On the way back, my words were meant as genuine concern, but she looked at me in horror, as if I were trying to harm her. She clung to my hand, begging me to spare her. Emma, I know it's my fault, but the baby is innocent. Can't you even spare one little life? Is your heart really that cruel? Perhaps words weren't enough for her. She suddenly dropped to her knees in front of me. You didn't want to have children, right? I can have this baby and give it to you. After all, we're blood relatives and David really wants a child. Just think of it as mom having the baby for you. People around us were immediately drawn to the scene. Some started taking pictures with their phones. Others asked what was happening. And a few, overhearing part of the conversation, jumped to conclusions. She was still the same as ever. They say blood is thicker than water, but with her, you'd never know. Both I and the unborn child were nothing more than tools. To her, this child's birth is destined not to be a blessing. I don't want my tragedy to repeat itself. Not long after, I received a message from someone had posted a video on TikTok of my mother kneeling to me, along with a voiceover. Unfilial daughter makes her mother kneel in public. Look at what's going on. In the comments section, some were even trying to dig up my identity. And when I looked at the profile pictures, I recognized my uncle's family pretending to be random bystanders. Some commenters were asking for my phone number so they could call and insult me. Well, it just so happens that I had one to share. Calmly, I left my uncle's phone number as a reply. Fair's fair after all. Who would have thought? The very next second, my uncle frantically deleted the comment. Chapter 5. David had planned to use the power of online public opinion to stir up backlash against me, hoping to make the shareholders think that my negative press would harm the company's image. He gathered so-called evidence of me exploiting employees at the company, videos and audio recordings, and planned to use them to win people over. Pleased with himself, he scheduled his press conference for the following afternoon. But I acted first, announcing my own press conference for that morning. What can she even say? I've got real evidence in my hands. This is just her desperate struggle, David remarked casually during his press conference. Beside him was a timid-looking employee, who he claimed was the key witness, ready to expose my true colors. Even though my video was circulating online, very few people knew my identity. Most people still recognized me from last year's news of my supposed death in a shipwreck. I decided to reveal the truth about my survival and to inform the public that the shipwreck wasn't an accident, but a carefully planned murder. Since people were curious about my story, I figured I might as well share the parts they were most interested in. Seeing that the tide was turning against him, David rushed to the front, shouting, "Don't be fooled. This woman exploits her employees, abuses her own mother, and that shipwreck. It was probably all staged. He shoved the employee he brought to the front, urging her to expose me on the spot. She pulled out a handwritten script from her bag, opened her mouth to speak. But the next second she tore the paper into pieces. My boss Emma didn't exploit me. It was David who forced me to frame her. She pointed at David, trembling as she backed away. David's smile froze, and for a long moment, he didn't know how to react. "What's the matter? Don't you have another trick up your sleeve?" I teased O'Wright. If I hadn't reminded him, he might have stood there like a statue. "Abusing your own mother, right?" I went ahead and finished the words David was about to say, but hadn't yet spoken aloud. He glanced at me suspiciously, puzzled by why I didn't seem the least bit afraid. I gave him a meaningful smile, raised my eyebrows slightly, and gestured for him to check his phone. David sneered and looked at his screen, but in an instant, his eyes bulged wide as if he had seen a ghost. "Like what you see?" I asked with concern. At this point, the media quickly caught on and began checking their phones. A handwritten apology letter appeared on their screens. The first person who had spread rumors online, accusing me of abusing my mother, had deleted their post and apologized, admitting they had made assumptions based on pictures to attract attention. How is this possible? He promised to ruin my reputation. Right, David? Don't think you're the only one who can play dirty. Someone who's already died once knows far better how to handle people. Seeing his pitiful pleading face, I smiled bitterly and turned to address the media. "Thank you all for coming." It said that family scandals shouldn't be aired in public, so I apologize for the scene. The man standing before you is my ex-husband and my mother's lover. The room exploded with chatter. David rushed forward to silence me, but security grabbed his arm, causing him to yelp in pain. While I was away, he took great care of my mother. The two of them grew close over time, and I understand that. Please, give them your blessings. Tears welled up in my eyes as they glistened with emotion. Emma's husband slept with her mom while she was gone. What kind of scumbag is this? How does this guy have the nerve to stand here? If it were me, I'd dig a hole and bury myself alive, with the weight of everyone staring on him. Sweat rolled down David's forehead in large beads. He couldn't comprehend how the once manageable woman before him had become so difficult to handle. Since her return, I pressed my lips together and lost eyes with him, savoring every bit of his awkward and humiliating state. Chapter 6. After the humiliation David endured in front of the media last time, he had since toned down his behavior, playing the good guy in front of everyone. Because my mother was pregnant and needed someone to care for her, I allowed David to stay in the house, though I made it clear he wasn't allowed to come near me. One day, while I was busy working in my room, he suddenly appeared behind me with a cup in his hands. Noticing him, I quickly gathered up my documents. "Here, drink some warm brown sugar water. I just heated it for you." He gently placed the cup on my desk. "I remember your period is around these days. It's good for your health to drink this." Who knows what he's scheming this time? I said coldly. "I told you not to come near me. Please leave." He sighed, reaching his hand over my head, hesitated, and then withdrew. "We were married after all. And here I am remembering your cycle. It proves I still care about you. Do we really have to be like this? Do you think acting all sentimental, pretending you can't forget your ex-wife, is going to make any woman fall into your arms? Don't overestimate yourself. Wash your face and see if you're even worthy." As if I had hit a nerve, he left with a bitter remark. "You're truly heartless. Guess I was just trying to be nice for nothing." With that, he walked out, seemingly feeling wronged. Looking at the cup of steaming brown sugar water on my desk, I recalled how he had also made me a cup before I left. On my business trip, I should have noticed something was off then. Normally, he would check the weather and, if it was bad, would insist I not travel. But this time he saw the forecast and said nothing. The trip wasn't even supposed to be mine. The person originally scheduled to go had fallen ill, and the others were either too busy or didn't understand the project. So I had to go. There was no trace of deceit in his gentle eyes. I took that as his way of expressing love, and drank the water without a second thought. Not long after, my body began to feel strange on the ship, and the next thing I knew, I was sinking to the bottom of the sea, the weight of 1,000 stones pressing on me, trapping me even at that moment. I still thought, what will happen to my husband if I'm gone? He'll be so devastated. How laughable that thought turned out to be. Remembering this, I picked up the cup, walked to the bathroom, and poured the water down the drain. How could you pour it out? That was David's kind gesture. It's because you never appreciate people's goodwill that you got abandoned by your husband. What's the point of a woman focusing on her career? Without a family or children, you're nothing. My mother, pregnant belly and all, stood behind me, lecturing me with her outdated views at her words. I saw there was still some water left in the cup and handed it to her. Then you drink it, and by the way, I left him. Don't act like he's some treasure to everyone but you. He's nothing more than garbage. Already older pregnancy had drained much of her energy, making her look even more aged than before. No matter how much I tried to convince her, she was determined to have this baby. You're just jealous that I'm giving David the love and a baby that you couldn't. When she puts it that way, what more is there to say? Her pregnancy symptoms were far worse than most people's. Sleepless nights, hair loss. It was constant. I told David to take her to the hospital for a checkup. David, however, acted like it was none of his business. Oh, come on, isn't that just normal pregnancy stuff? You've never been pregnant, so of course you're freaking out over nothing. If we'd had a kid before, you'd know all this by now. David is right. This is normal. It'll pass once the baby is born, my mother added, siding with him. Seeing my expression, David backed down, muttering under his breath. Fine, fine. Since Emma insists, I'll take her for a checkup. David, I'm fine. Don't listen to her. I can go on my own. David impatiently pushed her from behind. Stop talking so much. Your daughter said I should take you, so we're going. She's worried about you. After all, old age just means you're more prone to sickness. David is so good to me. Unlike my daughter, who only knows how to run her mouth, my mother said, clinging to David's arm, like a teenager trying to show off. She grabbed his collar and tiptoed up to kiss him. All I could think about was hoping these two eyesores would leave my sight as soon as possible. Unfortunately, despite my mother's high praise for David, this scumbag never went with her to a prenatal appointment again. He always had some excuse, or he'd conveniently disappear. Chapter 7. Her situation worsened, and her stomach pains became severe. It wasn't until a neighbor noticed and called me during a meeting that I realized something was wrong. Without hesitation, I handed over the remaining work to my secretary and drove back to get her. Come on, let's go to the hospital. I carefully helped her up. Her face was pale as death, cold sweat dripping from her forehead. But she still mumbled, "Why are you here? I want David to come get me." She struggled, refusing to go with me. Shut up. If you want to die here, I'll leave you to fend for yourself. And when you're dead, I'll burn you to ashes and scatter them in the river, so you'll have nowhere to rest, even in death. Only then did she reluctantly agree to get in the car with me. After a while, as we drove, her body began to calm down. You disgust me. Why is it that everyone only ever sees you, your father? David, they've always revolved around you. You're wrong. I gripped the steering wheel tightly as I drove, trying to suppress the storm brewing inside me. She had always seen me as an outsider, an intruder who had taken everything from her life. But she had never realized that, from the time I was small, there had always been a little figure by her side, longing for her attention. To earn your praise, I studied hard, refusing to take a day off even with a high fever. To see you smile, I learned to cook your favorite dishes, cutting my hands over and over in the process. All my life, I just wanted your approval. But you never once noticed me. What did I do wrong? Maybe I was never supposed to be born into this family. When I was younger, I used to think that if I were a boy, maybe you would have cared about me more. So for a while I dressed and acted like a boy. But you still belittled me and ignored me. Just like always, as I spoke, tears fell from my eyes. Unbidden, whether it was out of grievance or defiance, I couldn't tell. She listened silently, not saying a word at first. Then she finally opened her mouth. You're right. You should never have been born. But your life is worthless. The cheaper it is, the harder you cling to it. Not even the abortion pills could kill you. You won't drink the brown sugar water David made, because you're afraid it's poisoned, aren't you? She adjusted her seat, making more space for herself. I'm curious, though, how did you manage to survive? You should have sunk to the bottom of the sea with stones tied to your feet. I'll tell you the truth. It was me who drugged the water you drank. A chill shot through my heart at that moment. We stopped at a red light, and the crimson glow brought me back to the suffocating stillness of the sea. The face of the person who threw me off the boat was somewhat familiar, but I couldn't make it out clearly. The drugs clouding my vision. I'll never forget the feeling of drowning, water flooding my nostrils, my lungs gasping for breath, my head filled with a deafening hum in the end. I was left in the dark, unable to see anything, even with my eyes wide open. As the car started moving again, she began to speak slowly. It was me who killed you. I don't know how you survived. But this time, let's die together. Whether you think I'm crazy or guilty doesn't matter. I hope in our next lives, we won't be mother and daughter again. As she spoke, she reached out trying to grab the steering wheel. I fought to keep control of the car. There were vehicles in front of and behind us. I couldn't brake immediately. Amanda calmed down. We're almost at the hospital. But she wasn't listening to a word I said. She kept talking, oblivious to my please. If we survive this, I'd like to see who David would choose. Your father died from overwork because he chose you. That was his own fault. But David is different, isn't he? Emma, don't you dare compare that scumbag David to my father. He doesn't deserve it. My mother had completely lost her mind. She pressed one hand over my eyes, while the other tried to wrestle control of the steering wheel. I had no choice. Just before crashing into the car in front of us, I grabbed the steering wheel and veered left, crashing hard into the median's greenery. The windshield shattered, shards of glass piercing my forehead. Blood dyed the world in front of me red, and the force of the collision knocked me unconscious. When I woke up again, it was a week later. David sat by my bedside, shocked, as he watched me sit up as if nothing had happened. You were hurt so badly. The doctor said it would take you months to recover. How did you manage this? I ignored his question. It didn't matter. Maybe the doctor was just wrong. As for my mother, she lost the baby due to the accident. The doctors wanted her to rest, but she pulled out her four and disappeared while the nurse wasn't looking. Chapter 8. Staring at David's face. The memory of my past life being thrown into the sea became clearer. It was him who tied the stones to my feet, and it was my uncle who helped him push me into the ocean. But who was supposed to go on that business trip? Ignoring David's protests, I insisted on discharging myself from the hospital and settling the bill. As I was leaving, I asked David, aren't you worried about my mom's disappearance? Why aren't you out looking for her? He took a drag from his cigarette, showing no concern. She's a grown woman. She knows what she's doing. Don't worry about it too much. Or are you afraid she'll come back and try to take you down with her? This man was beyond saving. I left him behind and returned to the company. After instructing my secretary to organize a search for my mother, I went to the surveillance room and reviewed the footage from that day. The footage showed that the person who was supposed to go on the trip was the project manager. But just as he was about to leave, someone stopped him, and that's why he didn't go, instead handling other business. I didn't recognize the person who stopped him. When my secretary returned, I showed her the printed image. She seemed to have a vague recollection. This person was brought in by your aunt, but they didn't work here long before quitting. When did they leave? The second week after you went missing. A group of people had meticulously planned to kill me. This wasn't just about taking over the company, unless they were trying to cover something up with my death. Or maybe they didn't want me to find out about something. Should I contact your aunt to bring this person back? My secretary asked. I raised my hand, signaling her not to. If he was hiding, he wouldn't be easy to find. And if I asked my aunt about him, it would alert them. Bring me the company's financial reports for the last few years. I instructed her. A gust of wind blew in through the window, causing my arm to itch slightly. I scratched it, noticing some skin flaking off. Could it be an allergy? Boss, here's everything, my secretary said as she returned, snapping me out of my thoughts and back into the investigation. I quickly forgot about the possible allergy. Sure enough, over the years, this group had been quietly embezzling funds. Each year there was a discrepancy in the accounts, totaling over tens of millions. What else could drive them to such madness but money? It had to be something connected to wealth that they were so desperate to hide from me. Further investigation revealed that a large sum of money had mysteriously appeared in one of my rarely used accounts. So that was their plan. If the tax authorities ever came knocking, they would blame it all on me, the dead woman who couldn't defend herself. After all, a dead person can't argue in their own defense. I immediately consulted my lawyer. It was time for them to pay the price for their greed, while they were still reveling in their relief, thinking that being dismissed wasn't so bad, and that I was just a naive little girl. The police arrived at their door. They played innocent, shouting their claims of being wronged. seeing me being taken by the police as well. Their eyes lit up as they pointed fingers at me, slinging mud. "Officers, you should be arresting her. We're innocent. We've never done anything wrong. Investigate her. We will investigate everything. Please cooperate with the investigation." The officer replied. My uncle nudged my aunt with his shoulder, and she nodded, as if understanding something, and responded eagerly. "Yes, yes. We'll cooperate fully. But don't forget to check out that woman's hidden accounts. Oh, they're filthy." She leaned in close to the officer, whispering conspiratorially. Meanwhile, David arrived at the company and spotted the police cars outside. He hesitated, unsure whether to go inside. But the moment he made eye contact with the officers, he bolted like a guilty man running from the scene. With all the surveillance cameras everywhere, where could he possibly hide? At the police station, my uncle and aunt started spinning ridiculous stories. Whether asked by the police or not, they invented more lies, pinning everything on me. Their statements were so contradictory. Not a single word lined up. They truly believed their honesty had fooled the police, and even asked if they could go home soon. But when they saw me walk past them, completely unharmed and smiling as I waved goodbye, the realization hit them hard. Their legs trembled uncontrollably, like deflated balloons. They collapsed into their chairs. Only now did they understand. They wouldn't be leaving the station anytime soon. Chapter 9. I had no idea where David was hiding. The last time he was caught on surveillance was when he got into a fight after being accused of harassing his girlfriend and was beaten up. I sent my secretary to investigate my mother Amanda's whereabouts, but there was no news. Given her age and the complications after her mastectomy, if she didn't get proper care, it was entirely possible she had fallen ill due to a weakened immune system. I shook my head. I couldn't let David keep living freely, evading responsibility. I tried calling his number, but it was always switched off. Suddenly I remembered that he had a rarely used private email address. I figured it was worth a shot. I sent him an email, roughly explaining that the police had already identified my uncle and aunt as the ones who embezzled the funds, and that we needed his testimony to provide more evidence. I assured him that he didn't need to hide anymore, and that the company was in need of his help. Days passed without any reply, and I began to think my plan had failed. But then, he replied using a different email account, asking to meet me in a remote location. After making the necessary arrangements, I arrived at the designated spot. When I pulled up in my car, I realized it was a massive garbage dump, littered with heaps of trash and scavenging homeless people. It was clear David hadn't let down his guard. He'd chosen a place where he could easily slip away if things went south. Are you telling the truth? The police really cleared everything up. He wore a black mask and kept his hands shoved into his pockets. Judging by the shape, it looked like he was holding a knife. I nodded, telling him to get in the car. David glanced around nervously, as if sensing something suddenly. He pulled out the knife. "You're lying if the investigation was over. Why hasn't there been any official announcement online?" He lunged toward me in a panic. At that moment, a homeless man suddenly stepped in front of me, and David's knife plunged into the man's abdomen. But then David spat out a mouthful of blood, staggering backward, revealing the knife that had been lodged in his chest. He frantically yanked the hood off the homeless man, his face twisting in disbelief. "It's you." Beneath the hood was a woman. Her face was weathered and worn. She said, "Emma, I'm sorry. I finally realize all the wrong I've done. Is it too late for me now?" If it weren't for her voice, I wouldn't have recognized who she was. Mom. At the sound of my voice, she trembled slightly. Then, without hesitation, she yanked the knife out of David's chest and plunged it back in again. Even harder. David didn't even have time to utter a word before he collapsed. Lifeless, this man, like me, only brought harm by living. The police quickly arrived from all directions, immediately restraining Amanda. She didn't resist at all. I followed the officers, holding on to her, as blood continued to flow from her abdomen. "Don't talk. I'll get you to the hospital right away." She shook her head and, for the first time, looked at me seriously. She reached up and gently touched my cheek. The warmth of her fingers, the feel of her touch, felt almost unreal. "In our next life, let's not be mother and daughter," she murmured again. I wasn't a good mother. I didn't deserve a daughter as good as you. Foam bubbled at the corners of her mouth, confirming she had taken poison long before arriving. Her frail body gave in to gravity, collapsing against David's corpse. The doctors later confirmed that both of them were dead. And so, this tragic farce driven by greed came to an end. Everyone had pursued what they wanted, some veering onto dangerous paths, others finding some form of satisfaction. I looked down at my arm. The skin had started to peel away, revealing the bone underneath. Yet there was no pain. When did this begin? I remembered noticing it after the car crash, realizing that despite the severity of my wounds, I hadn't felt a thing. It turns out that rebirth doesn't truly exist. The dead cannot return to life. I was merely a vengeful soul, lucky enough to return to the past. Now that my desires had been fulfilled, my body was finally beginning to decay. I covered my arm, settled my emotions, and prepared to move on. Walking with the dead. How intriguing. No matter how long I have left in this world, living in the present without regrets will be enough.